Have you ever felt like a bystander in your own life, even after achieving what society calls stable? Each night, when the noise recedes, what remains is a strange emptiness, as if you're living someone else's life. And the most frightening thing isn't that you fail. It's that you succeed as a version of yourself that isn't you. Nietzsche looks straight into that place. He pulls you out of the crowd, out of borrowed right and wrong, and forces you to face the question we usually run from. If you stripped away everything you were taught to believe, what would actually be left? Are you choosing your life, or only choosing other people's approval? In this video, we'll walk through Nietzsche's map. How to recognize the kind of morality that weakens you. How to forge the will to power so your longing takes shape. And how to use a chilling test to know whether you're truly living your own life. The deeper you go, the more you're forced to see the truths you've tried to overlook. Stay until the end, because there's a test at the end of this video that, if you answer honestly, won't let you go back to living the way you used to. You'll wake up and realize you've abandoned yourself for far too long. Number 1. Your unique self is not something ready-made. Many people spend their whole lives with a nagging question: who am I? Then they go looking for the answer the way they'd search for a lost object. They believe their true self is somewhere inside, waiting to be unearthed, like a gemstone buried under dust. They read a few books, watch a few videos, take a few personality tests, and hope that one morning they'll wake up and hear a clear voice in their head. This is me. But Nietzsche would stare that illusion down and smile coldly. Because your unique self is not something you find like a key dropped under the table. Your unique self is something you create, and creating it always has a price. Nietzsche once threw a command at his readers, simple and ruthless at once. You should become who you are. A human being is not born complete like a stone statue. A human being becomes themselves through being stretched, broken, forced to choose, and then rising from the choice they made. Nietzsche hates spiritual laziness. He hates a way of living in which people only want everything to be clear, safe, and comfortable. Because that comfort is often not peace, but anesthesia. Many people call it being myself, but in truth, they're naming something else: ease. They want a better version of themselves that demands no discipline, a freedom with no responsibility, a truth with no conflict, a difference that doesn't disturb anyone. They want to be themselves and be loved, be praised, and still blend into the crowd. And when life doesn't give them all of that at once, they conclude they haven't found themselves yet. Nietzsche would say they haven't lost themselves at all. They simply haven't dared to pay the price to have a self. In other words, the unique self is a process. Nietzsche says it bluntly with an image. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. The self is like a rough bar of iron. When it lies still, it has no distinctive shape. When the fire heats it red and the hammer comes down, it begins to take form. Each blow carves a line. Each reheating lets it bear more force. Each quench in cold water makes it harder, but also risks cracking if the smith doesn't understand the material. Human beings are the same. When life hasn't forced you to choose, you can imagine you are everything. When a crisis hits, when a relationship collapses, when a career falls apart, when a belief is betrayed, only then does the self reveal itself. Nietzsche calls that the moment a person stops performing and begins to show their face. Modern neuroscience also happens to touch on a part of Nietzsche's intuition. The brain tends to conserve energy by following habits and quick rewards. Behaviors that bring immediate comfort are often reinforced more strongly than behaviors that require long-term effort. That's why people so easily confuse what I want with what makes me feel less uncomfortable. Many people don't truly want that lifestyle. They only want to escape the feeling of emptiness. Many people don't truly want that kind of success. They only want to escape the shame of feeling inadequate. Nietzsche looks straight at it and names it. That isn't the self. That's a reflex. Here, Nietzsche is ruthless, but also fair. He says the true self often lies beyond pain, beyond conflict, beyond trial by fire. That doesn't mean people should chase suffering to prove their strength. It means people must accept a hard truth. Everything valuable requires friction. Anyone who wants to remain unique cannot live forever in a padded zone. Nietzsche is often misunderstood as someone who promotes selfishness. In reality, he's resisting something else, the flattening of human beings into moral copies. When you understand the true self as a process, you begin to see life as a kind of alchemical furnace. Failures are no longer only humiliation. Rejections are no longer only wounds. Periods of solitude are no longer only punishment. Each becomes a test. Can you hold to your choice when no one rewards you? Can you live by your values when those values make you an outsider? Can you keep walking when all guarantees disappear? Søren Kierkegaard, another philosopher, once said that despair is sometimes not because you have nothing, but because you don't dare to be yourself. Nietzsche goes further. The deepest despair happens when you live a life that is right, but that life isn't yours. And then you wonder why you're always tired. The truth is you're exhausted from performing, from controlling your image, from policing your thoughts. Such a person doesn't live. They maintain a product. Nietzsche doesn't give you an answer like, are you an introvert or an extrovert, or what job fits you? He hands you a knife. That knife cuts straight through the illusion that the self is a gift. Nietzsche turns the self into a construction. That construction is built from habits, discipline, and the courage to take responsibility for what you choose. Nietzsche forces you to stop asking, "Who am I?" like a lament, and to begin asking, "What am I becoming?" like an oath. And here is the crucial turning point, the question Nietzsche wants you to carry like a stone in your pocket. To be honest with yourself, you must first know who is speaking inside your head. Is the voice pushing you toward a certain right truly yours? Is the voice that makes you feel guilty when you want to live differently the truth of morality, or only the fear of being excluded? Is the voice that says, "Don't do that, what will people think," wisdom, or a chain called the herd? From the moment you ask that question, Nietzsche introduces you to a herd mechanism operating in the way you think, the way you fear, and the way you choose. Number 2. Recognizing the herd and borrowed morality. The herd rarely appears as a screaming mob. The herd usually appears as standards, scorecards, and soft molds. The herd is the right and wrong you've never tested, yet believe like a law because you've heard it too many times. The herd is the goals and roles you chase, not because you desire them, but because you fear falling behind, fear being looked down on, fear being left at the edge of the game. And the price of that reasonable life is that the volume of life inside you gets turned down until you can no longer hear the call that truly belongs to you. Nietzsche nailed that mechanism with the line in Beyond Good and Evil. Insanity in individuals is something rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. Nietzsche calls it the moment a person drops the right to be the author. You put the pen down, pick up a script written by someone else, and call it my life. When the operating system in your head belongs to someone else, you no longer live as a unique individual. You live as a version optimized to be accepted. Nietzsche aims straight at the most subtle binding mechanism. Consensus creates a feeling of safety, and people mistake safety for truth. Social science calls this social proof. Asch's famous experiments show that a person can give an obviously wrong answer to a simple question just because everyone around them gives that answer. The frightening thing isn't that people are ignorant. The frightening thing is that people fear separation from the herd so much that they're willing to distrust their own eyes. The herd doesn't only decide careers or money. The herd slips into places that should have been private. The herd decides who you should love, when you should marry, whether you must have children, where you should live, what you should eat, what you should wear, and how you should speak to be considered refined. The herd becomes even more subtle when it turns everything into a moral score. Someone who dares to live differently gets labeled reckless. Someone who chooses a less prestigious path gets labeled lacking ambition. Nietzsche wants you to see the herd as an intruder in the mind. The herd is most dangerous when it no longer needs an actual crowd, when it becomes the moral voice inside your head. That voice always demands explanations, always demands justification. That voice creates a kind of internal police. You monitor yourself, judge yourself, and punish yourself before anyone else can. You fear being called selfish, so you cut off your truest desires first. Michel Foucault spoke about how modern power operates through surveillance and internalization. But Nietzsche touched the essence early. People are domesticated to be easy to manage. A truly unique individual is always hard to manage because they don't move to the same music. Nietzsche isn't calling you to hate the crowd out of cheap arrogance. Nietzsche is warning you about a loss. The loss of your capacity for independent judgment. When you live too long inside the herd, you get used to craving what is celebrated and call it a dream. You get used to fearing what is mocked and call it reason. And then you only consume meanings that other people have packaged for you. That is why recognizing the herd is not a luxury of philosophy. Recognizing the herd is the first step toward reclaiming the right to be human. You cannot be you if the operating system in your head belongs to someone else. You cannot keep your unique self if every decision must pass through the filter of what will people think before it ever touches your truth. Right now, I want you to be honest with me for a moment. How many times have you wanted to do something very small for yourself, only to swallow it back because a voice in your head said, "What will people think?" How many times have you longed for a different path, only to return to the old road because you feared being called different, feared being labeled reckless, and feared losing approval? If you've been there, it's okay. It only shows you've lived too long under the herd's gaze. If you can, leave a short comment. I'm living for others. Writing it down is already an act of reclaiming your own judgment, so that, for the first time, you can hear a different sound, smaller, but truer. Your own voice. And when you dare to name what is binding you, you begin to have a chance to loosen it. And the moment you begin to doubt the herd, that is when the door opens. That door leads to the question that will decide the whole journey ahead. What inside you is a true voice, and what is only the echo of the crowd? When that question is asked correctly, the herd begins to lose its power. When the herd loses its power, you finally begin to have the chance to live a life that isn't borrowed. Number 3. Unmasking slave morality and paralysis through guilt. There is a kind of goodness that looks beautiful from the outside. It is taught as a noble standard. Be a little more humble, and it becomes morality. Sacrifice a little more, and it becomes character. Endure a little more, and it becomes maturity. Nietzsche looks at that beauty and names it with an icy suspicion. There are good things that don't make you better, they only make you more cowardly. Not because kindness is bad, but because certain moral systems have turned kindness into a collar and endurance into a habit of self-binding. Its weapon is guilt and shame. Guilt works quietly like pre-installed software. The moment you have a deeply human desire, a vivid longing, a genuine intention, a voice immediately rises in your head under the name of conscience. Am I being selfish? Am I disappointing someone? When that question repeats for long enough, you can no longer tell the difference between morality and the fear of being excluded. And then you begin to doubt ambition, the desire for freedom, righteous anger, even the need to choose your own life. Some people stay in a job that is suffocating them, not because they believe in the value of work, but because they carry a vague guilt that leaving would be ungrateful. Some people endure a relationship that makes them smaller because they were taught that leaving is cruel, while staying and dying slowly is called loyalty. The poison lies in the fact that people call that paralysis a virtue. Modern psychology has a concept close to what Nietzsche is pointing at. When guilt and shame are planted too deeply, they don't just regulate behavior, they rewrite identity. You don't only stop an action, you begin to hate a part of yourself. Nietzsche calls this kind of morality slave morality, a value system built out of reaction, fear, and the need to restrain life. In that system, good is often defined as gentle, harmless, compliant, while bad is defined as strong, decisive, daring to want, daring to claim, daring to speak the truth. This is how a society produces respectable citizens. But this is also how a society crushes unique individuals. Nietzsche also touches a deeper layer that many people do not want to look at: resentment compressed and stored. When a person doesn't dare to live their own life, they turn fear into morality, turn powerlessness into a standard, and turn not choosing into honor. The mechanism is so subtle that it disguises itself as nobility. I don't pursue wealth because I'm above it, while the truth may be, I'm afraid of failure, so I deny the game. I don't need love because I'm independent, while the truth may be, I'm afraid of being hurt, so I don't dare to open up. When resentment grows stronger, people don't need to create beauty or value. They only need to drag others down. This is the dark point Nietzsche forces us to face. The price shows up where the body and mind begin to pay back the debt. Nameless fatigue, bottled up irritation, emptiness after doing what is right, and the feeling that you are living the life of a decent person who is no longer alive inside. Nietzsche does not want you to become a cruel person. Nietzsche wants you to become honest with the life within you. He wants you to distinguish between kindness that comes from strength and kindness that comes from fear. If you've been listening up to this point and your chest tightens a little because you realize you've also lived inside that kind of goodness, leave a small signal below. You don't need to tell a long story. Just write one honest line. What do you feel guilty about, even though deep down you know it's a legitimate need? It might be guilt for wanting to leave, for wanting to prioritize yourself, for wanting to live differently. And if you're not ready to name it yet, just type the number 1 in the comments as a way of admitting to yourself, I've seen that collar and I'm learning how to take it off. Nietzsche wants you to see this trick clearly so it can't hypnotize you anymore. One question can cut through that spell immediately. Does this guilt come from my real values or from the habit of obedience? The moment you ask that question, you begin to unmask it. And when the mask comes off, you'll see what's behind it is not holiness, but a training system, training you to distrust your desires, training you to fear strength, training you to call shrinking back morality. Number 4. The will to power. And when the old system breaks, you need a new force to stand up. Nietzsche places in your hands a concept that sounds like power, but is actually life in concentrated form. The will to power. The will to power is not domination over others. The will to power is the strength that gives your will a shape, turns what you value into action, and makes your life an unmistakable fingerprint. Nietzsche does not want you to be a king over others. Nietzsche wants you to stop being a slave to yourself. And he said it plainly with a definition as cold as steel. What is good? Whatever augments the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself, in man. You can understand will as what you truly long for and value, what makes you feel alive, what gives your life direction, what would leave your days tasteless like water if it were taken away. Will is what you are willing to spend time, energy, and a portion of comfort to pursue. And power, in the will to power, is not money or fame. Power here is the capacity to realize that will, discipline, so you aren't pulled off course, perseverance, so you don't quit halfway, and the courage to pay the price so your life doesn't remain a rough draft. Many people hear the word power and immediately think of coercion. But Nietzsche is speaking about a different kind of power. Inner power. A person with inner power doesn't need to make others afraid. A person with inner power makes others look because they have weight. That weight comes from consistency between what they say and what they do. Will is like a raw idea, like a lump of clay on a table. If you only stare at it and say, I have potential, the clay is still just clay. Power is the hands, the patience, the technique, the decision to sit down every day and shape it into form. Power is daring to be wrong, daring to fix it, daring to shape it again. Many people like to speak of the true self as something poetic, but they want a self with shape without having to pay for it. Nietzsche looks straight at that and says no. Your self only becomes real when it appears in how you use your time, how you choose, how you refuse, how you stand firm against the temptation of being praised. Here, we must separate a very common misunderstanding. Being yourself is not, I do whatever I feel like. That sounds free, but it often disguises impulsiveness and avoidance of responsibility. Nietzsche does not call that freedom. Nietzsche calls that being controlled. Being yourself, in the spirit of the will to power, means I take responsibility for what I choose. When you take responsibility, you stop blaming circumstances, you stop blaming childhood, you stop blaming the herd. You look straight at your choice and say, "This is what I choose, and I will pay the price for it." The will to power also helps you recognize a subtle trap, the trap of approval. Nietzsche would set a test. Do you want that, or do you want the feeling of being recognized by others? The first step demands uncomfortable honesty. Write down the 3 things you envy most. Envy is often seen as ugly, but in many cases envy is a compass. You don't envy what you don't desire. You often envy the person who dares to live what you were never allowed to. You envy the person who dares to speak, to act, to go, to choose. When you write down the 3 things you envy, you are seeing 3 desires that have been strangled. The second step demands that you look at the chain. Write down the 3 things you fear most if you live as yourself. Fear is often not just a feeling, fear is the map of a prison. When you write down your 3 biggest fears, you are seeing the door where the herd has locked you in. And strangely, when you stare straight at it, the chain often loses some of its power. The third step, choose 1 small action every day so your will is no longer just a thought. A small action might be writing 200 words a day, training for 15 minutes a day, learning a skill for 20 minutes a day, or refusing an invitation that drains you. Small actions are like a drill bit. It only needs to be steady, and it will break through. A person with the will to power is often calm, quiet, and dangerous because they turn will into habit, habit into character, and character into destiny. Nietzsche wants you to understand that real strength is not having intense emotions, but being able to keep your word to yourself. Someone can speak beautifully about freedom and still be a slave if they can't govern their own time. Someone can hate the herd and still be the herd if they live on approval. Someone can despise slave morality and still be chained by guilt if they don't dare to take responsibility for their choices. The will to power is the moment you stop asking permission. The will to power is the moment you stop living to be accepted and start living to become. We've made it through half the journey, and from here on, everything will become clearer and deeper. The next parts will take you to a deeper level, how to rewrite your own value table, and especially Nietzsche's final test, the one that can make you look back on your entire life under a different light. If this content touches what you're going through, and you want to walk further on the path through crisis to become yourself, like and subscribe so you don't miss useful videos that help you stop wanting to live shallowly like before. Number 5, revaluating values. Once you begin to have the will to power in Nietzsche's sense, once you have the strength to give a longing a shape, to turn what you value into action, Nietzsche calls the next step a revaluation of values, rewriting your own value table, deciding for yourself what is worth living for, what is worth paying for, what is worth honoring. You cannot be honest with your unique self if you are still measuring your life with someone else's ruler. Anyone who wants to truly belong to themselves must do what very few dare to do: break the old ruler and make a new one. Why has this become urgent in our time? Nietzsche said, "God is dead," and he was not talking about a corpse in the sky. He was talking about the decline of an absolute system of meaning, a world in which people were handed a ready-made purpose, stamped with ready-made labels of right and wrong, and shown a ready-made path. When that system collapses, human beings enter a fog Nietzsche calls nihilism. There is no longer a real reason to live, only habits to keep existing. This feeling is deeply modern and deeply common because life today can offer more convenience, more choices, more information, yet less meaning. Nietzsche does not want you to despair in nihilism. Nietzsche treats nihilism as a purification. When all borrowed meanings fall from your hands, you stand, perhaps for the first time, before real freedom, and real freedom is always cold. Nietzsche wants you to become a creator of meaning, not a consumer of packaged meaning. At its deepest level, the will to power is not only the capacity to get things done, but the capacity to set values for your own life. An artist not only knows how to hold a brush, but also knows what is worth painting. An architect not only knows how to build, but also knows what is worth raising and why. And to do that, you don't need to memorize philosophy. You need the courage to answer the 3 questions below. The first question: what makes me feel most truly alive? This question asks about the moments when you don't need to perform or prove anything, yet still feel full of vital force. Some people feel most alive when they create something no one knows about. Some people feel most alive when they do hard work, because they feel they are making an impact. Some people feel most alive when they help someone in a way that needs no credit, because the act matches their deeper values. If you look closely, you'll notice that these real moments often share one thing: you don't need an audience. You only need the alignment between what is inside and what you do outside. Nietzsche would call that a form of existential honesty, something the herd cannot give you. The second question: what makes me stronger, clearer, sharper? Nietzsche believes in good in the sense of increased vitality. Whatever increases your vitality has value. Whatever decreases your vitality, even if it is named with beautiful moral words, is still a poison. When you use this question, you begin to look at your life like a biology of the spirit. What nourishes you? What drains you? What makes you expand? What makes you shrink? The third question is the most painful. What makes me smaller, more timid, and forces me to perform? This question rips off masks faster than any lecture, because you will see that there are places you enter where you automatically put one on. Nietzsche wants you to stare directly at the places that make you perform, because the places that make you perform are often the places where your values are being imposed. Reevaluating does not mean rejecting everything old and rebelling. Revaluating is a delicate and ruthless act toward yourself. You bring each value into the light and ask who it serves. When you do that, you'll understand why Nietzsche sees the noble human being as the one who can create values. That person does not live to please the morality of the majority. That person lives in loyalty to their own vitality and turns that vitality into a distinct style of existence. Number 6. Chosen solitude. After you revalue and feel your life taking a direction that belongs to you, how do you keep that truth when the world keeps pulling you back into the old? Here, Nietzsche offers something that sounds like a paradox, yet is a key. Solitude. Not solitude as abandonment, but chosen solitude. Anyone who wants to be honest with themselves cannot rely only on inspiration or momentum. Anyone who wants to live a life that belongs to them needs a place to hear themselves clearly And that place usually appears only when you are brave enough to turn off everything that speaks in your place. Modern life makes it rare to be truly alone. A room may contain only one person, yet it holds hundreds of voices, videos, messages, notifications, news, drama. You can eat dinner alone, yet your finger keeps scrolling, your eyes keep consuming, and your brain keeps being pulled. You can lie in bed, yet your mind keeps chasing the life someone else is living. And you call it entertainment, while the truth is sometimes this: you fear the space, you fear the moment of silence with nothing to cling to, because in that silence, the questions you've been avoiding rise up. What am I living for? What am I running from? What am I betraying within myself? Nietzsche believes that big thoughts need silence. They often come when you walk alone, when your feet find their own rhythm, when your breath returns to your rhythm, when the mind stops performing. Solitude here is not sadness. Solitude is a ritual that separates you from forced sameness. When you stay in the crowd too long, you absorb the crowd's way of thinking without realizing it. Chosen solitude is like a quarantine room for the mind, where you wash off the social dust that clings to your will. A body needs sleep to recover. A self needs solitude to recover its capacity for independent judgment. Chosen solitude only requires a small discipline you can begin today. 30 minutes of silence every day, no screen, no podcast, no scrolling. 30 minutes sounds small, but for many people it is as frightening as a dark room. In those 30 minutes, the mind will remind you of unfinished tasks, urge you to check your phone, make you restless, and invent reasons to escape. You only need to sit like an observer and ask, why can't I sit still? In the mirror of solitude, you will see what you have been running from for a long time. The second practice carries Nietzsche's signature most clearly: walking as a ritual. Walk to listen, so your mind can breathe away from the outside world. And while you walk, ask yourself one single question: what am I running from inside myself today? You don't need to answer immediately. You need time to let the answer surface. Nietzsche does not romanticize solitude as a beautiful suffering. Nietzsche uses solitude as a tool to create a person with weight. Chosen solitude is also where you realize an uncomfortable truth. Many relationships in your life exist not because of love, but because you fear being alone. Many conversations you join are not because you care, but because you fear missing out. Many habits you keep are not because they are good for you, but because they help you avoid hearing yourself. When you dare to be alone, you will see these things so clearly that you can't pretend. And when you see clearly, you begin to choose again. Number 7. Eternal recurrence, the ultimate test of honesty. Nietzsche befriends you with a chilling test called eternal recurrence. Imagine this: one night, a demon comes to whisper that you must live this exact life again, every detail of it, infinitely many times. Not only the beautiful moments, but also the pain, the failures, the cowardice. There is no fast-forward button. There is no next time to fix it. There is only repetition, forever. If the answer that rises from within is no, if your body tightens, then you may be living a life that does not belong to you. Nietzsche does not offer this test to drag you down. He offers it to reveal a standard that is ruthless yet liberating, the degree of your honesty with yourself. Because there is another response, rarer, stronger. Some people can say, even imperfect, even with faults, yes, let it repeat. not because they have no regrets, but because they are living a life that does not betray their core values. When someone can say, "Let it repeat," they touch what Nietzsche pursued all his life, a life with weight, where every moment, even the painful ones, still carries meaning because it belongs to a direction chosen by that person. Here, the will to power becomes something deeper, the capacity to stand before your life and say, "I sign my name to this." From here, Nietzsche leads you into a way of living not meant for the faint of heart, amor fati, the love of fate. Many people hear love of fate and think it means resignation, letting things pass. So be it. Nietzsche does not mean that. Amor fati is to stand upright and say, "I take my life, both light and shadow, and I turn it into a work of art." An artist does not choose only bright colors. An artist uses dark tones to create depth. A person with the will to power does the same. That person does not ask the universe for an easy life. That person asks for a real life, then uses discipline and will to carve that reality into a distinct line of their own. When you love fate in this sense, you stop being a victim of the past. You stop using circumstances as an excuse not to live. You use everything as material. You turn pain into understanding, loss into depth, failure into structure, silence into voice. And here, Nietzsche's final question falls like a knock at midnight. If your life had to repeat forever, who would you still be living to please? If every cowardly compromise were to return infinitely many times, would you still dare to sell yourself just to buy a little peace? If every time you betray your values would come back like a song on endless loop, would you still want to live as a shadow? This question is not meant to scare you. It is meant to free you from the strongest chain of all, the chain of other people's eyes. When you truly face eternal recurrence, you'll understand why Nietzsche calls honesty a form of power. Because from that moment on, you no longer live to be accepted. You begin to live so you can say, "Let it repeat," without lowering your head. By now, you've likely understood that the honesty Nietzsche demands is to live in a way that you don't need to keep justifying yourself to yourself. When you stop chasing other people's gaze, you will hear something that used to be drowned out by noise, the breath of the self. That breath does not promise ease, but it promises truth. If you want to begin today, choose one small action that only you know truly belongs to you, and do it like a silent vow. And if you're ready, leave one sentence in the comments: "I want to live a life that belongs to me."